My son, Johnny, disappeared when he was 12. He was out on his paper route and never came back. The authorities were diligent in their search for him. There were hundreds of people looking for my son. I spent most of that time crying. My husband, Jay, attempted to console me, but all I heard was the fact that he was missing. My boy, my only child, gone. I often wished they would find him dead. As long as they find him, that would be fine with me. The unknown was intolerable. Sometimes I thought I saw him. I had to remind myself that he couldn't be 12 anymore. Time had moved on without him. So the smiling boy on his bike could not be Johnny. My Johnny was most likely on the ground or eaten by animals. Time went by so slowly. Jay left me after a few years. He said he couldn't handle how depressed I was. He wanted me to move on. But how could you move on without knowing where your child is? We still talked on the phone, and he even helped me with bills. But he remarried and had a little girl. I was genuinely happy for him, as happy as someone with no joy could feel. Then it was 15 years later. Nothing in my life had really changed. My cat died, but I kept her in the freezer because I couldn't let her go. I rarely left the house except to get the groceries. I was picking up some items, and I heard a young boy ask his mom if I was a witch. I did look the part. I didn't blame him. Knotted hair, disheveled clothes, and a hunger in my face. The day of the witch comment, I was driving home, and I saw a man walking along the road. He looked haggard and dirty. I was planning to ignore him, but he turned his head towards me and smiled. I slammed on the brakes. Despite the dirt and years, this man looked exactly like my Johnny. My mouth hung open. He grinned and walked up to my car. "Can I get a ride, ma'am?" I was at a loss for words. I nodded, and the man got in the passenger seat. My house was only 10 minutes away. At first we sat in silence. I was scared to even look at him. "Nice day," he remarked haphazardly. "I appreciate the ride, but I could use a good meal. Any chance you could help me with that?" I nodded. We were soon at the house. I pulled into the driveway. He got out of the car, looking around thoughtfully. I hoped maybe he would recognize where he grew up, but I couldn't know for sure. I unlocked the door and invited him in. He was the first person to enter the house other than me since Jay left. The man walked to the couch and took a seat. He seemed at ease. I still had no words, but I made it to the fridge and compiled a simple sandwich. I handed it to him, and he sat in the chair across the room. The way he ate his sandwich looked so familiar, yet odd. He removed the bread and lettuce and only ate the meat. My heart felt like it would explode. Could it be? Could Johnny have come home? He turned to me very suddenly. "I would like to live here with you now," he said sternly. "But you cannot tell anyone about me." "I never would," I exclaimed. He smiled. "It won't be easy living with me." "I don't care. I have waited for you for so long." I yearned to reach out and touch him. "What happened to you?" "I will tell you, I promise. But first, answer me this. What do you see when you look at me?" His voice was soothing. I trusted him. My son, Johnny, but all grown up. Tears filled my eyes. "Would you prefer me to be your little boy again?" My jaw quivered. Yes, I said in a whisper. Close your eyes. I did as he asked. I heard him get up. I dared not to open my eyes. He stood in front of me. You may look now. I opened my eyes, and before me stood my Johnny, 12 again. He smiled. It's me, Mom. It's Johnny. I wailed as I reached out to hug him. As my skin connected with his, I recoiled in horror. His body felt like sharp feathers. To the eye, he looked like my son, but to the touch, he felt like something different. He grinned and pushed his hand to my cheek. It felt like the talons of a hawk. The touch left large gashes on my face. I love you, Mom. I held back tears and looked at him again. I love you too, Johnny. He leaned in and licked the blood off my face. His tongue felt rough. I cringed. You'll get used to it. They always do. He turned his back to me and started walking towards the kitchen. For a second I saw something monstrous. An 8-foot-tall creature, hunching like a wolf on 2 legs, but covered in feathers. He turned to look at me, and his face was a thorny cone with a long, barbed tongue hanging out the side. I blinked, and he was back to being Johnny. He laughed and reached for the freezer. He gently removed my dead cat from the icy coffin. I lifted a hand up to my face, which was still bleeding but only slightly now. I couldn't stop shaking. You said you would tell me what happened to you, to Johnny. Chuckling, he twisted the cat's head and swallowed it whole. He came closer and softly asked, Are you sure you want to know? Feebly, I nodded. Please, tell me where Johnny is. His arm rose and pointed at his stomach. Your boy's right here. Excitement filled me for a moment. You mean, you're really Johnny? I breathed heavily. Oh, no. He shook his head in amusement. He saw me as his mother after he got lost in the woods. He was so happy to see me that he came running for a hug. His laughter felt like poison. He tasted like hope. I felt like I was going to throw up. He shrugged. You humans always see what you want to see. Makes feeding a lot easier. He went back to the cat, and the sucking sounds of his feast was disgusting. But as I watched him, something softened in me. The unknowing was gone. I now understood exactly what happened to my baby, and I may never get my real boy back, but right before me is a perfect copy. My Johnny. I didn't care what it took. I would never let this one go.